universities in just a matter of weeks. He's Professor Scott Galloway. He joins us now. Professor Galloway, what do you think the future of higher education is? When you talk about this reckoning, what do you mean?
Well, we have raised tuition rates 1,400% in the last 40 years. This is a time of year that's supposed to be a nervous but a rewarding time of year where people figure out where they're going to school, and instead it's become a time of year where people try to imagine how they're going to take several $100,000s on in household debt. So I think that, we have raised, when I say we, I mean the academic community, we've raised prices faster than healthcare. And at the same time, the underlying innovation, if you walked into a class today, it wouldn't look, smell, or feel much different than it did 40 years ago. So I think we've kind of stuck out the mother of all chins, and the fist of COVID-19 is coming for us. I think this involves huge disruption, and I think it starts this fall.
So you think this reckoning was coming anyway, Professor? I mean, the pandemic just sort of pushed it over the edge?
Yeah, if you think about it, COVID-19 is more of an accelerant than a change agent. And when I went to UCLA and Berkeley on a total of $7,000 in tuition for undergraduate and graduate. And now you're looking at students who have taken on more debt than credit card debt, which results in household formation later, much more risk averse in terms of the businesses they start, and families really suffering. This has been long overdue. There is a collective statement across America amongst parents watching their kids on Zoom going, this is what I've been paying for. Mm-hmm. So think of another product that charges over $100,000 that gets 90 plus points of gross margin. Other than a pharmaceutical for a rare cancer, there's no product in the world, not Hermes, not Ferrari, not Apple, that gets these sorts of extraordinary margins for a product that largely hasn't changed in 5 decades. So quite frankly, we have this coming.
Do you think some colleges realizing this or fearing this, that's one of the pushes that they want to get kids back on campus because they feel like the longer, it's remote learning or online, more and more people are going to say, what are we paying for?
100%. Just as stock market analysts are looking at companies that have the most cash on their balance sheet, we're going to look at universities and the ones that have large tuitions, tier 2 brands, and their primary value add was getting your kid out of the house for 4 years to kind of marinate. When that experience goes away, you're going to see demand destruction like you've never seen. You're going to see the top tier schools go into their waiting list. They'll be fine. They'll clear the waiting list. There's never been a better time to be on a waiting list of a tier 1 school, which will force the tier 2 schools to go much deeper into their waiting list. And then the tier 3 schools, Anderson, are going to reach into their waiting list, which they don't have. Of the 2,800 schools, the median endowment is $7 million, meaning a lot of these schools, if 20 or 30% of the students don't show up, which the surveys say they are planning not to do in fall, we could see 20 to 40% of universities start a death march, similar to what department stores have done. Second-tier universities are to education what department stores are to retail, and that is they are about to begin a death march.
Well, this is provocative stuff. And one of the things, Professor Galloway, you've also wrote about, you said that you think big universities are going to partner with big tech companies, I guess like Google or Apple, whoever, to help them expand, not because they have to necessarily, because they think that there's an opportunity, I guess, these tech companies do. Is that right?
100%. If you're Apple or Amazon or Google, you have this implicit agreement with the marketplace that your stock's going to double in 5 years. Otherwise, people will buy stock in Netflix or Salesforce. And in order to do that, Apple has to increase their top-line revenue by about $150 billion over the next 5 years, which limits the number of industries. They have to go big game hunting, and that literally limits them to government, defense, the auto industry, which is a low-margin business, and they will immediately zero in on 2, as they already are, healthcare and education. So big tech is about to come into education, not because they want to, but because they have to. And the benefit to universities will be that if you're able to use small and big tech to effectively take 50% of your classes offline, that is effectively doubling the size of your campus. So you're going to see a lot of universities leverage their brand, leverage their great leadership, such as Reverend Jenkins, and use technology to effectively double the capacity of their schools, which will let them lower their prices, increase their gross margin dollars, and this will have a hugely disruptive impact, again, on the culling of the herd, the culling of the tier 3 universities.
So back to the cost of college. I mean, do you think colleges then are going to lower their costs? And if you do, what do you see as the trigger to them doing that? Just suddenly they all have to start doing that?
Well, it depends on who we're talking about. So let's look at the Ivies, which are more spectacle than historic. Only 64,000 students enrolled undergraduate at all 8 Ivy League colleges, 0.5% of the 11 million kids at colleges across America. They're luxury brands. They're Hermes. Their benefit comes from artificial scarcity. They brag that they turn away 90% of their applicants, which in my view is tantamount to the head of a housing shelter bragging that he or she turned away 90% of applicants last night. They are no longer in the business of public service. They're in the business of finishing school for rich people and some incredibly remarkable middle and lower income people. They will largely or most likely maintain their pricing power and double down on their exclusivity. The big public schools where 2/3 of kids are now enrolled are likely, in my opinion, going to hold on to the script. The University of California, Berkeley will graduate more kids from low-income households this year than the entire Ivy League. And they will use technology as an opportunity to expand their seats at a lower cost. That will put cost pressure on the entire system. A lot of people are starting to do trade-offs around what is the certification and the education and a diminished experience worth. And this, like any other industry, is going to go through certain cost pressures. Name an industry that hasn't had to cut costs the last 40 years, and there's one. Education. So I think at the very top, Anderson, they continue to be Hermes. They continue to have artificial scarcity. But everywhere else, you're going to see a destruction in pricing power. The companies that can expand their margin dollars by larger volume will do so, which will create an enormous sucking sound and disruption and chaos at the bottom half of universities.
This is the most interesting 5 minutes I've had in a long time, and I wish this could go
on,
longer.
Anderson, go on.
I would like to take your class. I know maybe that's the wrong message to leave this with, since apparently it's all
$7,000 if you get to NYU.
Cheaper.
Professor Scott Galloway, really fascinating. I want to read more of what you write because I just think it's opening my mind in a lot of ways. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Up next, we don't.